You obviously are a amazingly successful businessman, with the companies you started and are still involved with. And I'd like to get into that, but probably where you're most known to many of the listeners is as Maverick's dad, Maverick McNealy. Obviously, he was number one amateur in the world, played at Stanford, uh, played professionally, got his tour card. And as we talked the other day, I think he's hurt a little bit, but not you have four sons. Um, what did they all play golf, or did Maverick gravitate towards that, and you introduced them all to sports, or how did that kind of get started? If we can go
Yeah,
back and start from the
I'll sort
beginning.
of anticipate the question that I get asked a lot. How did you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And the four boys are all pretty outstanding, I believe, in their own way. But my wife and I uh, took some unique parenting styles to work. One is they didn't get phones until they were 12 or 13. They didn't get social media until they actually got accepted to college. They played lots of different sports, but as it went on, we basically said, you're going to play golf and or hockey or not at all. Because I like golf, I like hockey, and I'm not your friend. I am not here to drive all over the world playing 15 different sports with four different kids. And you're just going to do hockey and golf. We liked hockey because it taught physical strength, physical courage, teamwork. It was not a round ball, so it tended to bounce really funny. It was reactive. It was not proactive. And it was kind of rough and tumble, and it sort of made you grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't like jerks, and they run them into the boards if you're jerks. So if you've ever played hockey, you know what I'm talking about. Golf is the gentleman's sport. It's reactive. It's mental discipline, although physical discipline also helps. But you're not in physical danger, but you're in mental danger at every step along the way. It was a very individual sport. You couldn't blame anybody. You can't blame your coaches. You can't blame the weather. You can't blame anything. You can, but it's BS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were two really great sports. I played both. I loved both. I could help them with them. And having all four boys pretty close in age, we could go to golf tournaments and they could all play. We could go to hockey tournaments and they would all be playing. And we went to a hockey rink that had 8 rinks and we were running around watching our boys. One would get off his shift, we'd run over to another window, watch. I mean, it was the best. But they slept in the same room, 4 beds lined up, 1, 2, 3, 4. They worked in the same study, which they literally were bumping elbows in the same study. There were no electronics allowed in the room. There was no TV, no phones, no games. We had a game machine that lasted about 2 weeks, then it broke and it never got fixed. They went to the same schools. They ate the same food. They did all of the same rules. And we just said, you can do sports only after you finish your homework and if you're getting straight A's. That's all we said. That was our parenting model around sports and all the rest of it. We never forced anybody to go practice golf or whatever. On Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays, we'd go to brunch at the club. And after brunch, we all went to the range. And if you didn't want to hit balls, we said, fine, go sit in a car, and then we'd bring out the ice cream to the kids who were hitting on the range. And, we'd all aim at the tractor and we'd be laughing and having a ball. And eventually the fourth kid would come out, you know, I don't want to play hockey. Or you go tell the coach you don't want to play hockey and then go sit in the car when you're done. And then they go in and play hockey. They all became very, very proficient at both. I mean, Dakota, number 2, played at Stanford. Colt, number 3, and by the way, he was doing computer science, so I don't blame him for not being number 1 in the world. Although Maverick did computer management science and engineering and got his degree in 4 years while he was
Mm-hmm.
doing all that stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's pretty impressive. These guys, Colt finished CS in 3 years at Stanford. And I caddied for him at Cal State AMS and all the rest of it. He could have played in just about any Division I. Probably not Stanford, but certainly not doing CS in 3 years. And then Scout did Baylor golf and played on the Baylor golf team. And they named a special team award for him after his 4 years. It's called the Scott McNealy Award. Goes to the best teammate on the team, and it's a perpetual award. So they're all incredibly great golfers and really great kids. They all played very high level travel hockey, and but you know, it was just mom. Their mom is. You ask them, "You afraid of mom or you afraid of dad?" Oh, mom. You know, she's she's the tiger mom, and she was not going to was not going to be intimidated by these 6 foot plus super strong boys. She was going to keep them in line, and they're all really, really, really good kids.
I remember you had invited us over your house after that round of golf and introduced us to the boys, and it's hard to imagine. I mean, they were all little kids back then, and to your wife, and you could see back then that she let them be boys, but she also had them reined in when needed to be. Because as soon as she either gave them a look or said something, that they whipped right into shape. That they knew they knew what line not to cross with mom, and
They're all
it,
very
it,
fit. We had a rule that we were going to have a safe house. We kept the junk out of the house,
mhm.
and you know, it's going to be meat, fruit, vegetables. You know, that's what you're going to eat. And if you don't want to eat it, and each boy tested us, if you don't eat dinner, we're going to just put wrap over the top of it, and that's your breakfast tomorrow morning. And each one of them tried that, and each one of them said, you know, it was better at dinner. I think I'll eat it next time, and then have a real breakfast. And uh, I was very clear about, if the drugs don't kill you, I will. And I didn't smile when I said it. You know, this is just straight parenting. When they were not allowed sleepovers. You don't
Hmm.
do sleepovers. That's just not going to happen. I don't know what's going on in that other house. I want to know what's going on in our house. We had bedtimes. Scout would go to bed at 7:30. Half hour later, we'd come in and put Colt to bed, and then a half hour later, and then a half hour later, and they're all down. So it's just, you know, routine and all the rest of it. And kids want that. Kids need that. And we let them experiment, you know, rush. If you're a defenseman, rush, hit a driver off the deck. Those are the kinds of life experiments that kids can take, and those are good experiments, and they learn things without causing damage to anybody or anything. So, you know, I love sports. I love the academics. Colt writes his own piano music and plays beautiful
Wow.
piano. And they all have jobs, and they're all wagering who's gonna be the most successful. And Maverick's name seldom comes up as number one.
So they had the structure provided by um you and Mrs. And then you and as in addition to that, you allowed them or encouraged them to experiment in whatever tasks they were doing, be it golf or hockey. You know, as you said, hit driver off the deck, do this, do that. But I would have to say that the character development that they got from the structure, which I think is significantly lacking in today's world. And I had a fellow, he's a very good friend of mine. He's in the World Martial Arts Hall of Fame, that was on the show a while back. And we talked about how his school has just slowly diminished over the decades, as has golf, because he had gotten into golf a number of years ago. He'd been in martial arts for 40 years. He wanted to get into the golf business as something else. But the things that those two things teach, in addition to sports, but I'll just use the golf analogy in the martial arts, and that it teaches patience and it teaches discipline, and you're going to fail and you come back and you're going to get knocked down and you got to get back up. That is, in today's society, it seems to be something that is significantly lacking. And he gave the keynote speech at the World Martial Art Hall of Fame induction this year, and his speech was all about dopamine addiction. Not to get off on a tangent, but just speaking how so many people who I coach nowadays, when they come to play golf, the better players in particular, the higher the handicaps or beginners, understand that they have a big mountain to climb. But the better players, if they don't get better quickly, really quickly, then they abandon what they were working on, or tend to, once they reach a certain level, as I'm sure you've seen with your boys who played at a very high level, and obviously Mavericks on the PGA Tour, they don't abandon it. Then they stick to it, especially if they have some history with that coach. But I'm just speaking in general terms, that it just seems like some things in today's society are going the opposite direction that they need to. And it's just nice and comforting to hear the success of your boys, given what the fundamentals and principles that your wife and you instilled in them.
You know, we made them play sports, not do video games, and not do you know, all of the social media stuff, and it just was ridiculous. So yeah, I'm pleased with those decisions. I know it's very, very hard for parents. We had their passwords all the way through high school, and that was it. I mean, you just have to be a parent. I remember one parent was upset at how her daughter was treating her, and she said, "Where's your phone? I'm taking your phone away." Her daughter ran and hid her phone so that her mom couldn't get it, and she was asking Susan what to do, and Susan says, "Call AT&T and cancel the account."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't do that. Well, yes, you can.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I can't feed him the food the next morning. Yes, you can. And it's it's just you can't be their friend. You have to be their parent. And unfortunately, there aren't enough kids who have both mom and dad there paying attention. And I think there's, unfortunately, with for a whole bunch of reasons, some people think they need to have two incomes
Mm-hmm.
because they want all these other things. But
Yes.
you know, I was fortunate enough to have a wife who had a Stanford undergrad and a Santa Clara graduate degree, and we got married. And she said, "I want to stay home with the boys." And you know, certainly I was wealthy enough to afford that without any cost to our way of living. But I'd have sacrificed everything, you know, that I had,
Mm-hmm.
every golf club I had, to be able to give the boys, you know, a full-time mom at home. It was, you know, it was just so, it's just so important, I think.
Was there uh, did Maverick show a lot of talent and or promise as a young boy growing up, or was it something that it was more that he came to you and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to achieve this I want to win an AJG event, or I want to be AJ Player of the Year, or I want to do this."
I
How
didn't
did
let
that?
him go do AJGA. I said, "Maverick, if you win every amateur event in Northern Cal, I'll get on an airplane with you." But I've never seen a golfer get better in an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's like leaving Minnesota to play hockey, you know, to go play hockey somewhere else. I mean, why would you leave Northern California? So uh, when he got into Stanford, he had never played outside of Northern California, except he qualified for the U.S. Worlds and went down to Southern Cal for
Mm-hmm.
one event. But that's how he got it. He got to Stanford, and you know, his two teammates. One was the number one recruit, Jimmy Liu, in the U.S., and then the number one recruit from Australia, Virat Badwar. And Mav was the number one recruit from Portola Valley, California. And you know, it just he put his mind to it. We never even. I tried to talk him his senior year out of going pro, even with all of the awards and all the rest of it. And I said, "Mav, it's tough, you know. And do you want to be an entertainer, or do you want to create value and jobs and all the rest of it?" And we sort of came to the conclusion that I'm very supportive of him playing golf if he's the world's best role model. And you know, by a role model doesn't mean you got to win the most tournaments,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of guys who win tournaments and are I wouldn't have dinner with them, right? So you know, that's what he's doing, and I'll tell you what, you see the impact he has. He likes to do kids clinics, and the executives he meets, you know, KPMG has him at these events, and the execs just love him, the way he handles himself, his stories, and his engagement, and he's learning from them, and they love teaching him. And it's you know, he's doing way more than just pounding a white ball, and pretty proud of that.